It's both Halloween month and the 30th anniversary of Darkstalkers, aka the vampire series in Japan at the time of this video's release, so it's the perfect opportunity to talk about everyone's favorite monster fighting game that lives on through crossovers. It's one of my favorite fighting game franchises, and to celebrate, why don't we do an old-fashioned ranking of every playable character? I've already covered the most notable non-playable characters in the past, and given characters numerous entries on other lists, so dedicating an end-all be-all list to all the main characters seems like the perfect topic to commemorate such an anniversary. Though I mainly do top 10 lists on this channel, and there are 18 characters, we can't just leave 8 off, we gotta cover them all. How about this? To make it a clean top 20 list, I add the 2 mimic characters in the ranking. Since I want this to be a list from the heart that also goes over the fun lore, I'll be judging these characters based on backstory, moveset, design, and simply the vibes. I love all these characters, but some I like more than others and want to give proper recognition to them. Now, let's unleash the top 20 Darkstalkers characters. Number 20, Marionette. It was easy ranking the bottom 2 for this list since they're just mimic characters. Marionette was only available in Japan in updates of Vampire Savior, which was known as Darkstalkers 3 internationally, and in international markets, you could only find her on the PlayStation port of Darkstalkers 3, where you put in a code on the select screen where she's essentially the random button as a character and only on the arcade ladder. She turns into an exact replica of the character you're fighting against, so she's the character you pick when you want to play only mirror matches. And she has no backstory, so we don't know her purpose. She has her own victory screen winning music though. We only see her as the marionette on the character select screen and at the beginning of matches before the fight, but I do like how she gets in character, by being loaded into the character shell with her strings. Makes me interested to see how she'd be reimagined if we ever got a new Darkstalkers game. I'd envision something that goes with being a copycat, like Seth in Street Fighter 4, where he has at least one move for most of the original 8 fighters. Anyway, thanks for taking the hit of being at the bottom of this list, Marionette. Still love your design. Number 19, Shadow. Shadow is the other mimic character hidden on the select screen of Darkstalkers 3. It ekes out a rank above Marionette since I think the gimmick of how it picks a random fighter is cooler. The first fighter you get as Shadow on the ladder is random, but after it wins a match, it copies the form of whoever you just beat and you're that character for the next fight. Then rinse and repeat until you beat the arcade mode. I also like the way he visually copies his opponent. In the middle of the win pose of whoever he was for the fight, the body freezes and turns gray as Shadow crawls out of it. Then he reforms over the body of the fallen opponent, and on the victory screen, which is blank, the character Shadow just defeated flickers on the screen for a second before staying as that character, showing the transformation is complete. It also plays this offbeat tune as Shadow takes over. I don't know music, so I don't know what the proper term is, but it has a creep factor to it. Similar to how Marionette could play like Seth in Street Fighter 4 if she got her own moveset, Shadow could play like Seth in Street Fighter 5, where he has some of his own attacks, but also has a special move where he copies one of his opponent's attacks to reference how he steals their form in Darkstalkers 3. But that's it for the mimic characters in this video. Let's go on to some of the harder decisions for this list. Number 18, Sasquatch. Sadly, one of the classic characters had to be at the bottom, and the unlucky one is Sasquatch, but I had an objective method of picking him, sort of. It involves the official Darkstalkers YouTube page, presented by Capcom. Did you know this existed? It was created to advertise the Darkstalkers Resurrection bundle for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in 2013. It hasn't been updated since 2013, and even though it's just a company page that would be revived if a new game or collection were to come out, it feels kinda sad looking at it all abandoned like this. Anyway, the point is, this page has a trailer for each playable character, and if you sort the videos by most viewed and and scroll down, you'll see Sasquatch's trailer has the lowest amount of views, so I let that be the scapegoat on why he's so low because I didn't want to choose. I won't be doing this for any other rankings. As for why he has the lowest amount of views, no idea, but I'll take my best guess before we praise him, because I still love the guy. He's so friendly, he's like the least hateable guy in the game. He doesn't have any relations to the characters in the story, just joining the fight when members of his village go missing, which is still a noble cause, and honestly, I think the bigger reason he has the lowest view count is because he's been in no crossovers, so he doesn't have the mainstream attention that Morgan and pals got, and he just so happened to draw the short straw when it came to characters in that boat. That being said, this list is about celebrating Darkstalkers, and Sasquatch is still a very fun character. There is no bad character in Darkstalkers. He's got ice powers up the wazoo, and they change between games. His freeze move is a snowball initially, and then it was changed to this little breath in Darkstalkers 3. And he's got a throw where he takes you right to the source of his ice powers by eating you to freeze you. Don't worry, he spits you out. Darkstalkers 3 also added in a move where he throws a banana peel impediment. In fact, his village loves bananas so much that the lead villain of Darkstalkers 3, Jeddah, managed to kidnap members of his village because he offered them bananas and they gladly went with him. I just like to imagine the serious Jeddah sprite holding out bananas to the audience. Not to mention, he's got friends all over the place. He has snow doggies to take you for a quick sleigh ride, and an army of exploding penguins, which opens up the question, are they okay? Does this count as a fire attack to balance out his ice attacks? He also has snowman buddies in his wind pose, where he seems like a humble guy. He's doing a aw shucks pose. Also, the fun little noise the snowman made appears way less frequently in Darkstalkers 3 compared to the previous games. Why did they do that? Were people annoyed by it? I wasn't. I want to hear it again. I want to hear it right now. Number 17, Huitzel, or Phobos in Japan. I wish I could put him a bit higher, but Huitzel lacks a bit in the personality department, which still makes sense since he's just a giant robot sent out to destroy things for the original final boss, Pyron. But he's not just any robot, he's a robot in Darkstalkers. Some of his moves are typical for mechanical fighters, like antique rocket boosters, missiles, and guns, but he also has a few quirky moves, like his magnets that magnetize anything, and his laser beams that freeze. Plus, he can just hit you with random shapes hidden in his body. He's got a giant sphere, though I always felt like he could have had more random items to fight with, especially since one of his wind poses has him take out a one-man band. Why can't he use those to fight? And even though I said he didn't have much personality, you still see a bit of it in his wind poses where he lets the animals of the forest run around on him. He's a regular Android 16 with how much he loves nature. Funny enough, Huitzel is the only official sub-boss in the series, since the villain after Pyron, Jeddah, did not have a main lackey on the roster, and sometimes acted as the sub-boss himself in Darkstalkers 3 depending on who you played as, but in the first two games, you will always fight Huitzel right before Pyron. Huitzel loses a bit of visibility though, since he was one of 3 characters excluded from the main version of Darkstalkers 3. However, the PlayStation port of Darkstalkers 3 added him back in and gave him a missing piece of personality. He accidentally gets reprogrammed to protect a boy named Cecil, so now he has a kid's sidekick to make Huitzel extra wholesome. I went over Cecil on my Forgotten Darkstalkers characters list, but basically, he's a nice kid. Even before Cecil, some aspects of Huitzel's story are so ridiculous, you don't care that all of his wing quotes are just tech talk. Like, he has been on Earth for so long that the game claims that he's the one who led to the extinction of the dinosaurs. As I said on my sub-boss list, open the door, get on the floor, this robot killed the dinosaur. Number 16, Bishamon. I like Bishamon, but I think he ended up lower on this list since his moveset is not as interesting to me. It's badass, revolving around a sword and spirits, but I'm more of a fan of the wacky powers and weapons of most other characters in the series over his. For backstory, he's a normal guy who was possessed by wicked living armor and a sword. Now he fights on their behalf. The cursed armaments want Bishamon to gather souls so they can live, and I guess those souls are tasty since he's just licking the flavor all off that sword in his victory screen. Once he was freed, the armor came to life on its own and was the character without the human inside for Darkstalkers 3, which gave Bishamon a bad rap since the character was still called Bishamon. The armor is actually named Hanya and the sword is Kian, but Bishamon has all the name recognition so the character kept that name, though the real Bishamon was still fighting him, both as his duty and because that's identity theft. I think I like humanless Bishamon better since the armor can do more unhinged actions without him, like break apart and float around on its own. And yes, he could do this outro even with human Bishamon in the armor, but I always wondered where the person inside of him goes when he does this. Seems like it would be easier to do this maneuver without the human holding him back. His moveset involves throwing swords and throwing souls, and then following it up by running over to the opponent or telling them to get over here. He's got a few other slashes in his arsenal, but as I implied, I wish we saw some more sword tricks from him. I feel like he had potential to do more with the souls that he's collected. The super move with them looks nice though. Finally, I always felt like Bishamon could be Darkstalkers' way to cross over with more fighting games that used weapon-based combat. He'd fit great in Samurai Showdown or even Soul Calibur. You know the drill, make it happen Capcom, or SNK, or Namco. Number 15, Pyron. It feels weird to put one of the main villains this low, but I think it's a combination of his moveset being only okay and his motive being kinda weak. He's an alien who adds new worlds to his collection. Now he's here to take our world, and characters need to defeat him to save those who they love, or just to take his power. Considering this is a world with many different creatures of the night at odds with hunters, it feels kinda random that an alien from outer space who has no interest in this conflict is the final boss. I think I would have preferred something like a human or demon who hates everyone that knows about the conflict to be the final boss, see Darkstalkers 3, rather than someone who coincidentally found a world with a bunch of cool monsters when he was just looking for any world. Though it never bothered me much since Pyron is a sick design, but since backstory is a part of this list discussion, I wanted to bring it up. But as I said, great design. It's fit for a boss character. It's just exuding this powerful aura of flames, and the body is not fully solid, so he's constantly dissipating before reforming. It goes with the whole gimmick of him being a creature beyond our comprehension. As mentioned, his moveset is sort of in the middle for me. Half of it is really cool. I love his projectiles that take up more room than the other projectiles in the game, and they can curve. He also turns into a wheel of death, which is pretty nice. And his super move where he creates a storm of rainbow fire is fitting for his bossness. But then some of his other moves feel like they're missing that impact, like where he does this dive punch, which, I don't know, for a cosmic being made of fire, I was expecting something a bit more explosive. Though I think his coolest looking attacks are just his normal moves, like for his standard punches and kicks, he turns into a bunch of flames and punches a pillar of fire into the ground. He doesn't need the special moves, he goes nuts without even needing a joystick motion. Number 14, Rikuo, or Allbath in Japan. I held on to Rikuo for as long as I could for this list, but I think I have to drop him off here. He's technically one of my favorite characters, but I'm pretty sure it's just because of that running gag in the Darkstalkers cartoon from the 90s that did not follow much of the lore, where when a character was telling Rikuo they did not trust him or something like that, they'd follow it up by saying that he was strangely attractive for a fish man.
You are curiously attractive for a fishman.
I do not believe you, though you are strangely attractive for a fishman.
I know your heart. It is filled with darkness, even though you are curiously attractive for a fishman.
It was a complete non sequitur, but it was just funny. At first I thought, oh, the cartoon's making up stuff, since his face looks somewhat monstrous in the sprites. But then you see his victory screens, and he's like, oh, hello, didn't see you there. But beyond his looks, his backstory is about trying to find more of his species from a lost Atlantean-inspired empire. He's pretty removed from the plot, but he's doing his own thing. He's got kids to look after once he discovers more merfolk. Look at all the eggs he has to to sit on. And for his moveset, it's just every aquatic animal the developers could think of all rolled up into one. Just think of your favorites. He's got crab claws, pufferfish chest, frog tongue, and I think there's a bit of cephalopod in there. How about a clam? That's water themed. He shoots pearls at you. This kind of stuff is what Darkstalkers is all about to me. Characters just pulling out surprises that make their bodies shape-shift in different ways. Besides the animal parts, his moveset is waterlogged, from bubbles to tsunamis, with his best strategy being the move where he floods the field and rides on a manta ray like a surfboard. This technique is actually great competitively for putting pressure on the opponent with a little rushdown, so if he doesn't overwhelm you with his strange attractiveness, he'll get you with his offense. Number 13, Anacharis. Anacharis is a super creative character, especially when it comes to moveset, but when it comes to backstory, this is the most confusing one to me. He's a pharaoh from ancient Egypt who gets visions of the final boss eventually attacking in modern day, so either aliens or demons, gets mummified thousands of years in the past after dying, and then gets revived in the modern day. Then if he defeats Pyron, he somehow goes back in time and tells everyone that he protected them as the living pharaoh and not a mummy anymore. Yet the threat that was coming was in the future when everyone in the kingdom was likely dead already, so I don't know if they were even in direct danger. Darkstalkers 3 at least makes it seem like the kingdom exists in another dimension, so I could see how he travels between time periods, but still I'm not 100% sure what time he's in now. Backstory aside, his moveset is very unique. For special moves, on the surface, he has bandage grabs that rip through the space-time continuum, and his own sarcophagus that he can dump on top of you. For hidden moves, he has curses. Most famously, a curse that he can spit out to turn you into a small thing that's related to what you are, or just one where he blasts you with everything he has. This is less of a curse to me and more just him showing off. He even gives a Looney Tunes vibe to end it by dumping a larger than average sarcophagus on you. And the big gimmick of this moveset is how floaty he is. His jumps and walk speed are so slow, likely to trade off for his big body. It feels like jumping underwater with him. I've always strayed away from playing him since this strategy doesn't fit my playstyle, but it definitely feels like it's perfect for certain players who like that weird style of character. The floatiness also complements how Anacharis is actually two guys. His familiar Khabeet maneuvers Anacharis' legs when he splits in two to float around on his own for one of his techniques. I know this isn't how they work, but I like the visual of Anacharis standing on top of Khabeet under his wrappings as he does all of his serious speeches. It's just two guys posing as one in a trench coat. Okay, not really, but it goes with how Anacharis has the most hidden surprises. Number 12, QB. QB might be the most unsettling of the Darkstalkers creatures, and that's all because of her characterization. While she has some body horror in her animations, her entire concept is uncanny. There's an insect colony called the soul bees in the demon world, which are bees that feed on soul energy, and by the looks of it, she just eats her opponent entirely to get to that creamy soul center. No one is safe. I discussed the members of her colony in my Forgotten Darkstalkers video, but basically any of them could become QB. It's just a title for the queen of the colony who controls the other bees and fights on the main stage. When QB dies, she's replaced by an identical one, which happens whenever she forms an egg around her opponent, and that's an attack. You can watch her die mid-match and get replaced, which is one of the coolest attacks in fighting games. And they all have a one-track mind. They want their food, so that's all they're fighting for. QB always felt so detached from the fight. She's hunched over, barely looking at her opponent, and she doesn't speak any language. The only language she knows is eat. She also seems to be the only one to out-creep Jeddah, where she creates a voice in his head that he doesn't even know where it's coming from. She even gets narration text in her ending since she cannot talk, which adds to her mysteriousness. And of course, she has a very cool moveset. Half of it involves the various ways she can sting the opponent. She can do it once, she can do it many many times, she can even launch it and regrow the stinger, and the other half is just other bee things. She commands her bee army for many stings, and once again, there's that throw where you watch her die. You're so focused on watching the new one emerge from the egg that you almost don't notice her dying off to the side. Going with how she cannot talk, her attack names are just letter abbreviations that I think leave it up to the imagination to decipher what they mean. Like I assume QJ stands for Queen's Jelly since she throws a big ball of honey at the opponent. Speaking of that, the honey ball might be her most horrifying attack, not because it hurts you or anything, but because it leaves you sticky, and the worst thing in the world is when a food or beverage leaves your skin a bit sticky and you don't have a chance to wash it off right away. Number 11, Victor. Victor's another character I held on to longer for this list since I love him so much. However, I know he's not the most relevant or popular character, especially since his trailer was the second least viewed next to Sasquatch. But unlike Rikuo, I like Victor for more than just one gag. Still, there will be a gag involved. For his backstory, Victor was created by Dr. Gurdenheim, who created Victor as a legally distinct Frankenstein's monster to show the advancements in the medical field, so nothing intentionally malicious like the actual Dr. Frankenstein. However, Gurdenheim died shortly after creating Victor from an ongoing terminal illness. Thinking his silence was disapproval, Victor thought he had to earn the doctor's respect by showing his strength, so he beat up a bunch of guys. But then he eventually learned what death is and understood the doctor would have been proud of him regardless. Plus, Victor had a new mission: be the guardian of Gurdenheim's other major creation, a childlike creature named Emily. When Emily fell ill one day, he tried beating Jeddah for the souls he was collecting, thinking that would help, but instead she needed electricity, so he expelled all of his to save her. I know it's a cheesy ending, but I love a sappy story like this. I legitimately hope he's okay. The moveset is something else I also love for him. It combines grappling with electricity, but every time he does one of his electrified attacks, it makes the impact feel great since it doubles his size. His punches, kicks, lariats all make his limbs massive when those attacks are active. Even when he headbutts you, he's got a giant head. It's the opposite of my criticism that Pyron's dive punch lacks the explosivity you'd expect from a guy on fire. You see how strong Victor is when he's making these hits. And the best part of his moveset? The butt. Remember when I said a gag is one reason I like him? For whatever reason, they caked him up and let you hit people with his butt so extensively that his cheeks can turn into hand shapes and he can grab his opponent that way, as the soul of the doctor creates electricity to help Victor get as much damage as possible with this attack. Who thought of this? It's the greatest attack ever. Ask me on the right day, and Victor is a top 5 character because of this. But for now, he gets number 1 on this half of the list. Number 10, Jean Talbane, also known as Galan in Japan. Talbane's always been a commendable character. He just wants to keep to himself. He's a loner who's been shunned by human society since he's a werewolf, to a point where they want to kill him, so he just has himself to trust with the occasional few Darkstalkers. I've always liked his role in the anime OVA, where he helps Felicia escape some hunters and starts spouting off some lines of wisdom. I didn't quite understand where he came from, but I was like, oh good, he's a nice guy. The coolest thing about his portrayal to me was his Darkstalkers 3 final boss fight. Jeddah is only the sub-boss in his arcade mode, with his final boss being himself, representing the fight with his inner demons not to go feral and maintain his humanity. I like that story-wise, he's basically a Street Fighter character, only werewolf instead of Satsui no Hado. Speaking of Street Fighter, his moveset as a concept sounds great. Kung Fu Werewolf. He's also from London to add in something else. He's got Nunchaku, a Dragon Aura, flip kicks, and most importantly for his game plan, the Beast Cannon, which is a flying rush forward where he howls. If you're in a match with Talbane, get ready to hear "Awoo" a lot, because he can chain multiple of these together, so you're constantly hearing "Awoo, awoo, awoo." It forces you to remember that this is his most important soundbite. Number 9, Lilith. This is like the closest 9 through 1 has ever been on a list for me. They're all that good. You probably already know about the existence of the main succubus on the roster, Morgan. Her power was so great that her adoptive demon father Belial sealed away part of it when she was young, only to be released after he died. However, it did not go as planned, and the piece of Morgan's power formed a will of its own, and when the final boss of Darkstalkers 3, Jeddah, tried to combine the human and demon worlds, it caused that piece of Morgan to get its own body, named Lilith. Then Jeddah recruited her to lure Morgan and the other Darkstalkers over to him so he could take their souls, meaning Lilith was sort of a villain in her first appearance, but she seemed so carefree and ignorant of the world that she might have not even understood what she was doing, though her main personal goal was still to essentially kill Morgan. She wanted to complete herself, which would have involved absorbing Morgan and making the dominant personality Lilith. But once again, she's just going off instincts and might not mean any harm. All she knows is she's incomplete if she has no one guiding her. But is she successful? Well, let's wait for the Morgan entry to learn. Some media also refers to Lilith as Morgan's sister, which in a cosmic sort of way is a fine explanation and makes for a funny fan art of them sharing an apartment or something, but she's more like a clone. That's partially evident in her moveset. It's kind of like Sakura to Ryu, where she has modified versions of Morgan's most famous attacks. She's got a small soul projectile, her own ways of slashing you with her wings, and she can split herself in two for a full-on assault. However, she also shows how she's a carefree spirit with some of her unique attacks, like forming arms with her wings and shooting the opponent like a bow and arrow, and she was featured on one of my disrespectful fighting game super move lists for her gloomy puppet show, where she forces her opponent to dance on stage for a rhythm game and then tells them they suck at dancing. Also for her normal walking motion, it's skipping, which further encapsulates how fun of a character she is. Despite being the second place succubus, over the years I feel I've seen more support for her, including a somewhat widespread meme where people would edit her windscreen to say something funny, so if she helps bring modern attention to Darkstalkers, do whatever you want, Lilith. Number 8, Baby Bonnie Hood, aka BB Hood, also known as Balletta in Japan. We have another character who is great on the concept alone, Bounty Hunter Little Red Riding Hood, murderous bounty hunter. She goes into battle wanting blood. I've always thought of her as the protagonist of Darkstalkers 3 to an extent. She is center stage on some of the posters and promo art, and she is a newcomer out to hunt every character on the roster because she views them all as a threat and paycheck. I think the game has multiple protagonists, but BB Hood acts as a chaotic neutral anti-hero who still wants to kill the main villain, so she does have a somewhat unified goal in mind. Though her personal final boss isn't even Jeddah, it's Lord Raptor, so was the zombie man her main goal? I don't think they ever explained it, but that goes with her vibe. We just know that she has the bounty hunter job, but we don't know anything else that motivates her. She has a lot of characters that follow her, namely her dog Harry that follows her on screen, the hunters John and Arthur who appear in her shooting super move, and a guy in her win poses named Mr. K. I assume he's either an accomplice or maybe a butler, but he holds her hit list. Like, we see everything, but we learn nothing. She's clearly a seasoned hunter, so is she actually a little girl or just a 30-year-old who uses her youthful look to her advantage? And why does she beatbox when she wins sometimes? All this is great, and the personality carries over to her moveset. Her signature basket of goodies is not full of goodies at all, it's packing heat. For close range, she has knives, and for distance, she has guns and bombs, and those aren't even special moves. Her heavy punches take out the rapid fire, and her heavy kicks release an explosive from under her skirt. It is so fun just continuously hitting heavy kick while she jumps towards or away from the opponent. She can also fire missiles from the basket and hit you with the basket itself, which is surprisingly damaging. What's that thing made out of? The super moves get wacky too. She gives her opponent a poison apple and goes full innocent mode where she flails her arms and cries a pool of tears which she then throws the opponent in to attempt to drown them. You know, I had a suspension of disbelief for the infinite basket of weapons, but this one just confuses me. Good job, BB Hood. Number 7. Donovan Bane. When it comes to protagonists in the series, Donovan feels like the de facto protagonist, at least in his game of origin, no ambiguity. In Darkstalkers Revenge, which was the second game and basically a remake of the first Darkstalkers, it cemented that Donovan was the main character of the game since he was a hunter but also a Darkstalker, being a Dhampir, or is it Dhampir? I've never had to say it before. It's half human, half vampire. This makes him a compelling main character, since his human side wants to hunt the Darkstalkers who attack the innocent, but his vampire side knows the pain and struggle of being called a monster when you mean no harm, or at least can't control the harm. He's trying to prevent his dark side from taking over, and in doing so, he's protecting a child named Anita, who is shunned by society for her strange psychic powers. Anita might even be more famous than Donovan at this point, to where I almost thought about giving her a separate entry on this list, but she did get an extensive segment on my Forgotten Characters list and my Fighting Game Families list, so she's just a side note here, but an important side note. Donovan would not be the same character without her. The only reason the darkness ever takes over against him is because he has to give in to it for a bit if he wants to protect Anita. Also, Donovan got main character focus in the Darkstalkers anime OVA, so if you like Donovan, this has got a lot of Donovan in it. His moveset and appearance also feel like they were trying to impress. Donovan is a big JoJo's Bizarre Adventure reference since he was created during peak JoJo's popularity in Japan. He fits Araki's art style, and Capcom was working on their own JoJo's fighting game around this time, and the concept art of Donovan shows him summoning the Stand Moody Blues, which fits the timeline of when this game came out and the part of JoJo's that was being released in Japan at the time. This concept art sells me on Donovan, since look at his nonchalant style as he surfs on his sword, which he can also do in game. The JoJo's references are so strong with Donovan that he actually has a stand, actually no, 3 of them. They individually control fire, ice, and lightning. They just seem to exist for the reference, but it goes with how Darkstalkers characters can do inexplicable things. He also has a sword with teeth, which he can move for cool sword tricks, but I like when he does remote attacks with it and doesn't use it. It drags along like a tired pet. It's kinda cute. Donovan may be serious all the time, but he's got some goofy hidden within. Number 6. Felicia. I love pure good characters who would never be evil. Give me the goody two-shoes, and that's what Felicia is. She's the least evil character in Darkstalkers with nothing corrupt and no dark side to worry about. I love the pure joy that she emits. She would never harm anyone, except that butterfly in her wind pose. That had no chance. Oh wait, it's okay. Even better. Of course, she does have to fight, but that's more for survival when provoked. She just wants fame, or a quiet life, depends on the ending. She was an abandoned cat girl raised by nuns, and now that she's an adult, she wants to become a famous singer and dancer. Most endings in both the games and crossovers have her achieve that dream, but her Darkstalkers 3 ending instead has her go back to the orphanage and support the kids as a nun, which would be a funny alternate costume for her at some point. Honestly though, her default outfit is so intriguing. Since she's a cat woman, she wears no clothing and just has strategically grown fur, and people just accept it in the Darkstalkers world. I know we're talking about a world with like every mythical creature, but no one ever comments on it or thinks it's weird. If you're part cat, indecent exposure doesn't exist. I'm happy for her. Not gonna lie, besides the lack of clothing, this design is really satisfying. I love her big blue hair and watching it flow as she runs. Plus it has those 2 tendrils that break away from the main mass of hair, and that giant curl in the front. This is like the perfect hairstyle for me. I also like the depictions of Felicia that are drawn to be more muscular, since it goes with how she has the strength of a cat on a human body. Her moveset is all about doing cat leaps and scratches in a very nimble fashion. She overwhelms you with her speed, so she just uses pure physical strength and athleticism to punch through whatever magic crap this universe has. No one talks enough about how Felicia is the only fighter without magic or weapons. No otherworldly powers or heavy artillery needed for her. Just raw Felicia, baby. Number 5. Jeddah Doma. Jeddah is the best final boss in Darkstalkers. It's not hard since there are only 2, but with his unique powers and the authority his design demands, it would have been easy if he had like 10 bosses to compete against. Though his motive isn't anything too special. After awaking from a long sleep, he learns that he was the last remaining of the elder nobles of the demon realm, and then seeing all these new nobles fighting and the humans and the other wretched beasts, he decides to fire them all and start fresh, and by that I mean destroy everything and make a new realm, which involves this giant baby thing he created. His stage is called the Fetus of God, and this thing is freaking out in the background. One of the most unique boss stages in all fighting games, and I gotta cover creepiest fighting game stages at some point to talk about it more. Even though Jeddah is the main villain of Darkstalkers 3, the arcade ladder only ends with him if there's not some more story-relevant rival fight to face for a character, like how Talbane ends with Dark Talbane, or Lilith fights Morgan, or Felicia fights Lilith. For those characters, he acts as the second to last fight and still does his whole spiel about his spirit room. Even though he might just be a side note for other character stories, he sticks out big time with his moveset. I've praised it many a times in other videos, but it's a combination of Shinigami Reaper stuff and blood manipulation. The Reaper stuff comes into play with his various blades and his wings, and he has a scythe built into his body, and he just likes to cut you while doing his iconic laugh. And for the blood attacks, just beautiful. On a basic attack level, he can dismember his own limbs for bloody extensions, and I think his head even falls off for one of the attacks. And for the bigger blood attacks, he has a bubble of blood that he traps you in, a sea of blood that he drags you into while laughing again, and the move I always have to gas up when Jeddah is discussed, the giant blood contract where he summons a blood hand to smash you into it and you make a full body blood outline to finish the attack. One of the coolest super moves in all fighting games. Number 4. Shenko, also known as Lele in Japan. Asking me who my favorite Darkstalkers character is can result in a different answer each time depending on how I feel that day. But more often than not, I'll say it's Shenko, since she has the best balance of things I like. Backstory is neat, design is funky, her anime appearance is sassy, the moveset and playstyle fit how I like to fight and is wacky enough for the game, and her support character is just as badass as she is. Shenko and her twin sister Mei Ling used a spell to save their mother's soul from damnation after she saved their village from a Darkstalker attack with her own forbidden magic that ultimately killed her. The sister spell worked but killed them in the process, turning them into the Chinese hopping vampires Jiangshi. Shenko's undead body was stable enough to fight, and Mei Ling was able to keep Shenko from losing mental control by turning into word paper, so the two of them team up to fight the dark. Shenko was introduced in Darkstalkers Revenge alongside Donovan, going with the theme that the new characters in this game were Darkstalker hunters who also had a dark side to keep in check. But Shenko was always the cooler one to me. I think it was the mix of everything. The blue skin was cool, and I liked how she introduced herself in the anime. Her and Mei Ling were approached by some drunk ruffians, so Mei Ling flips one of them over and Shenko then emerges and combines with her to beat them all up. I also like how she sarcastically greets them with "Ni hao" in the dub. Shoutouts to Nicole Oliver for that. And of course, the moveset is wacky. Shenko has big sleeves, which conceal her array of weapons. She's got various blades, included her bladed gauntlets, and those are not her hands at the end. It's just because her sleeves are packed with so much stuff. There's concept art showing it off. But the most in-character attack with the sleeves is her random item toss. She's got things like knives and axes, but she also pulls out things like active bombs. The sheer planned randomness of these sleeves is so much fun, and I love how physics takes effect when she wins and all the pieces fall out of the sleeves at the end. Though physics don't always affect her since she can run on the air, which just goes to show how I love everything about her visually. Number 3, Lord Raptor, also known as Zabel Zarok in Japan. This is the sickest character design in the game, and it's a crime they have not put him in a crossover fighting game at this point. Imagine if Raptor got exposure in Marvel vs. Capcom. He's more or less a villain in the series, and would make for a good villain rep in a crossover, or even as a future final boss. He was an Australian rock star who was interested in occult stuff. When he wrote a song based on a ritual in one of those books, it sent the souls of his audience and himself to a demon lord named Olsen, who said he would give Raptor more power if he collects Darkstalker souls for him. Raptor accepts with the intention to overthrow Olsen. In Darkstalker's Revenge, his arcade ending shows his new zombie body getting the power boost, and it's serious. They show him as a legitimate threat now. But in Darkstalkers 3, the ending has it where he gets more power, but his body just explodes since it's too much, so he toes the line between funny and an actual threat sometimes. In part, I think it's because he has a funny concept, zombie rockstar. Also, when he's an anti-hero in the anime, as he's stealing the souls of the hunters who were after him and Felicia at his own concert, he has a good one-liner where he says sinister sarcastically, "Where you going? Don't you want to buy a t-shirt?" He also offers Felicia some souls, and she's like, "No thanks, that's not my thing." So part of him seems like he could be an alright guy here, but I think his ultimate fate could be his super boss mode as the final boss if we ever get a new Darkstalkers game. They kinda test ran that with Raptor being BB Hood's final boss in Darkstalkers 3, and I don't know why they did that for story reasons. The only visual connection I could see between them is Raptor's demon buddy makes heart eyes at Hood or her dog. The animations on his attacks are crazy. Before even fighting, his walk is stiff like the zombie he is, but it still moves fast, and he bobs his head rhythmically to go with his musician background. I sometimes like moving forwards and backwards just to watch. My favorite basic attack is when he slithers his spine out to reach the opponent. Otherwise, his moves are all about repurposing his bones into various other sharp objects, like a spinning top of death, or a different spinning top of death, or a buzzsaw. And to go with the amps for his guitar, some of these are electrified. Though I wish he did more musical attacks to go with the rockstar part of his backstory. He mainly saves his guitar for the win poses or counters. However, when he brings you into his domain, it plays the intro notes of Bad by Michael Jackson, so that's musical enough for me. Also, he can play basketball. Not sure where that fits in with the whole zombie rockstar of his design, but it's something fun they did. Number 2, Dmitry Maximov. Whenever I thought about putting Dmitry a few spots lower on this list, I felt an outside force telling me, no, he has to be high. And I think it's because as one of the true main characters of the series, he's kind of been disrespected over the years. He never gets to be a crossover representative for the franchise. It's always his rival main character Morgan, and a random assortment of other Darkstalkers characters. The only crossover fighting games that feature Dmitry are Capcom Fighting Evolution, which was a rushed crossover that people tend to exclude from conversations, and SNK vs. Capcom, which was SNK's crossover. They liked Dmitry so much, they told Capcom they'd use him if Capcom wouldn't. Like Anna Karis made it into a crossover before Dmitry. Dmitry is one of the coolest versions of Dracula. They made him buffer than your standard vampire and gave him fire. He was a noble of the demon world who challenged the strongest demon Belial for his territory. After being defeated badly to a point where he lost some of his power, he was banished to the human world for a century until he was ready to fight again. However, Belial died during that time, and his role was taken over by his daughter Morgan. So now Dmitry is in a power struggle with Morgan. He also canonically defeated Pyron after he came back, so that's neat. Despite his demeanor, I'd say Dmitry is more of a neutral party. He hates humans and thinks of them only as useful for blood, but he doesn't really care about deceiving or killing them. You leave him alone, and he'll leave you alone, maybe. Many of the people that he sucked the blood of tried breaking into his castle, so, you know, it's not really his fault that people were dumb. Though he has some women that willingly live in his castle, so maybe he's a good host. Probably has great healthcare benefits. That is, being turned into a vampire so you won't need the healthcare. So I'm not gonna jump to conclusions about his morality yet. Besides that, his visuals make him him look cool without the backstory, like letting the shading hit him to emphasize his overwhelming strength, or the sheer rage in his character portrait, reasons why this is the perfect Dracula clone. He even has that aura, which is actually a shield against sunlight so he can fight on any stage. It's a staple of Dimitri's design I can't imagine him without. Even when he's hit with a fire attack, he shows a bit of goofiness, where he's doing a thinker pose as he falls like, that could've gone better. As for the moveset, it's Dracula Shoto. He's got fire Hadokens, he can teleport into a spinning dive kick, and he has the coolest Shoryuken in fighting games to me with his Demon Cradle. I love quoting this attack as much as I like saying Shoryuken! And of course, you can't bring up Dimitri's attacks without mentioning Midnight Bliss, where he sucks his opponent's blood but changes their form into something more feminine, except for when he arbitrarily wants to do something else. Like he split Shenko into the two sister forms, or turns Morgan into this weird doll thing. And why does Raptor's form get a gun? Wouldn't he not want to give his opponent a way to fight back? It's actually a reference to an anime, but still, Midnight Bliss is one of the more wild attacks in fighting games.
Come on, baby.
Hi everybody, it's the #1 pick. Do I have to do a build-up monologue here? Y'all know it's Morgan. She's the only character left, and come on, she's the face of the franchise, and it's well-deserved. While my ultimate favorite character generally goes to someone like Shenko, Felicia, or Lord Raptor, Morgan tends to be my favorite when I see her in crossovers, since I like having her represent the funky world of Darkstalkers, mixed in with the world of other properties from Capcom, SNK, Marvel, etc. Still, Morgan is fantastic in her series of origin. Upon her introduction, Morgan was a parallel of Dimitri, a demon noble who is a neutral party, but she leaned a bit less violent. She still viewed humans as a source of energy, but being a succubus, she needed their soul energy, though this can be obtained through excitement, so she doesn't need to do anything romantic or sexual like a standard succubus. It can simply be through a fight, which, good news, you're in a fighting game, Morgan. While humans are her playthings, she doesn't intend to kill you, she just wants to put you back where you were when she's done. Granted, I don't think she cares if you live or die, but still, she seems less antagonistic than Dimitri is, probably because she's a good guy in all those crossovers. Since she inherited the throne from her father and it wasn't something she really wanted, she would rather run off and have fun than stick to the family duties. Then we learn how she's missing a part of her power in Darkstalkers 3, which became Lilith, and when the two meet, regardless of whose ending it is, Morgan will always absorb Lilith and regain her power, either unknowingly in Lilith's ending, or directly through her bosom, and then with that newfound power, she feels ready to stop running and take the throne for good. With that being the last game in Darkstalkers canon, I feel Capcom tried to expand Morgan's story in some of the crossovers she later appeared in, like how Marvel vs. Capcom shows Lilith and Morgan combining into one before a match. I've always liked those touches. Morgan is always one of, or the only, Darkstalkers rep in Capcom crossover fighting games, which sort of retroactively made her the true protagonist of the series. While she was always a main character, some games were clear about other characters being the lead too, so her prominence in the crossovers and overall popularity made it where she is the lead character when promoting any new games and her story takes center stage. With no doubt, Morgan took over the series. To get personal, even in my 2018 stream where I played through the arcade ladder of Darkstalkers Revenge to beat it for the first time since I could never overcome that 90s Capcom AI difficulty, I went in with the intent to get Shenko's ending, my favorite character, but since I struggled on nearly every match, I switched on and off characters constantly and planned to go all in with Shenko once I got my first loss against Pyron. Well, Morgan said, I'm the main character, and after I beat Huitzel with her, I then beat Pyron with a fluke on my first try, despite needing many rematches against Huitzel and most of the latter prior.
Guys, I'm gonna use the dark power. We're gonna get Morgan.
You know, this is like calling Goku. It's like,
yeah! Okay. Whew. Okay. Here we go, guys. We're gonna get to final boss, Pyron J. McHugh. He's not, he's blue. Oh, that's a hot flame.
Shot of raid!
So, in a weird twist of fate, I struggled against so many of these other bosses. I defeat Pyron in one... Sleep, dear Pyron. Pyron, sleep. Sleep, okay, well, dream forever and ever. And get a trophy while you're at it.
It also helps her notoriety that her design is so great. It's unique from the teal hair, to the glove things, to the bat tights, to the bats themselves, which appear to form her clothing and just make platforms. The flurries of bats in her wind poses are iconic. And to go with how Dimitri is Vampire Shoto, Morgan is Succubus Shoto. The Soul Fist is her well-known fireball, and her Shadow Blade is the Shoryuken, but a less emphasized part of her design that works with her moveset is that she also has rocket boosters. I guess she's part mech. She can fire bullets out of the technology in her bat wings and glides like she has an engine. As I've said, Darkstalkers is wacky, but they never acknowledge why this magical creature has machinery, and I really want an explanation. She's just that much of an enigma. Morgan has always been a sign of optimism for me. She comes back no matter the crossover, keeping the pulse on a series that would be dead otherwise. Even looking back at her original arcade ending, the sheer joy that she has after returning from a sneak-out session can't help but put a smile on my face, and I get this sense of nostalgia watching the gate close as she looks at the camera. No other endings have that door closing animation, making it feel like the bookend for a twisted yet somewhat sincere fairy tale, though many of the original Darkstalkers endings have that sense of hope to them. Seeing these struggling characters accomplish a dream really makes me feel happy, even if I just know them as those wacky fighting monsters. So thanks for holding down the fort, Morgan. Enjoy being the #1 Darkstalker forever and for always.
Does it feel?
Now, what did you think? Where would you rank all the Darkstalkers? Who's underrated and who's properly rated? No Darkstalkers overrated though. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.